If you don't see the value in what I do, then, well, if they don't see the value in what you do, maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it's your fault. Maybe you didn't show your value that well. Maybe you aren't that valuable.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Welcome back to the Better Than Rich Show. I'm your host today, Mike Abramowicz, and I am here with Curt Kempton, and I'm going to read his bio just because it was one of the most entertaining ones that I have had a chance to do. So I'm going to read it. Usually I don't read these word for word, but I have to. So our guest today was voted Mr. Personality back in Gilbert Junior High School in 1993 to be exact. Fast forward 10 years and a mountain biking career didn't pan out. But that didn't slow him down. Instead, he built and sold an internationally award-winning window cleaning and pressure washing business in just 5 years, then went on to create a system and software that drives millions in home services every single month. Along the way, he became one of the most influential voices in customer journey consulting for the home services world. His product, ResponsiBid, is a favorite in the window cleaning and pressure washing industries, but it's the ideas behind it that make today's conversation so exciting. Welcome, Curt Kempton.
Hey, how are you? Good to
What
meet
a
you.
fun bio. That's cool, man. I like it. So Kurt, as I mentioned before we click record, a lot of the guys that we're talking to are in the trade, season 4, and I know you have had some success with your own businesses, as we just alluded to in the home services, and then now you're supporting, as it says, millions of individuals inside the trade. So can you just give us a little bit of a context? Why the trades? How'd you get into this? And then tell us, I'd love to dive right into what problems does ResponsiBid solve?
Yeah, so I mean, it all just ties right together into the same story, which is that I thought I was going to be a professional mountain biker. Uh, Ran into all sorts of family and like logistical issues with that. So when I was in college, I decided to start a window cleaning business, and that really introduced me to the home services industry. I mean, for me, it was very eye-opening. I couldn't believe that people paid. Like, I grew up in a house where if you want your windows cleaned or something pressure washed, you go do that. Like, I didn't realize people would like pay people to do it. And there's a lot of intricacy with that, understanding your target market and serving them at a high level and delivering, certain standards, and then being able to grow enough to be able to get other people to deliver at that standard. And over time, it just occurred to me like if I'm gonna do this, I gotta do it really right. And that's where we started winning some of the awards that we did in our very brand new business. We got the Professional Image Award contest from the IWCA, the International Window Cleaning Association. We got that for like 4 years in a row. Just because I was just trying to really push us next level. And I realized that most people who get into the home services industry, they are tradesmen, they're craftsmen, they are technicians. And I was building a business and a brand and an image and a consistent output machine. And so, in that, that's sort of what led me down the road of turning something simple with low barrier to entry, like window cleaning, into something much, much, much bigger than that. And then from there, I just realized that the sales process, I just was inherently bad at it. Like I knew that I just was not born as a good salesperson. I was taught as a kid indirectly that salespeople are bad. They're manipulators. They're, people who just try to take your money. And it's funny because it's not true. A salesperson adds value to the world, and yes, they make money. Like they are literally the income machine of a business. It's a necessary part of the business. But I had these weird things in my head about it. And so, what my first reaction to that was, well, I need to figure out what makes a good salesperson. And I just started basically systematically building out that process. And that process is ended up being the predecessor to the software that we make now, which is, ResponsiBid is a sales funnel software. We basically help you to quickly and easily turn the specifications of a job into good, better, best packages and bundles, curated offerings for your customers that are much more likely to result in someone saying yes instead of yes or no. And And then we have a follow-up process that goes with it and an integration into the way that the sales process works in many different channels so that where your customers are finding you and are comfortable, they will land where you need them to land.
Okay. I want to go, I like to go tactical and I like to go deep typically with these conversations. So, Christine Hodge, who's coming on the show, she said that she cannot live without this software. She's like, this is one of the best softwares that they have. They're running a seven-figure company up in New Jersey. So, she's coming on the show to talk about some best practices. But I'd like for you to break down. You said, I went through the sales process and figured out what makes a good sales process. And then you built a tool to help support that sales process. Can you break down from like soup to nuts what makes a good sales process? Can you initiate the uninitiated of like what do you mean by a good sales process? What does that actually mean?
Sure. Well, for me, it actually started a little tiny bit higher than that, and that is what makes a good salesperson. And the reason that I did that was because I had some moral and ethical issues that I need to solve. Now, I know not every single one of your listeners is sort of bound by these sort of things like maybe hiccups in their head. But to me, a good salesperson starts off with being concerned about what the other person's value is going to be at the end. That concern, the ability for a person to be deeply worried about what the other person's going to get in exchange for their money, that is sort of what drives a good salesperson. Now, once you know that, you can apply that to a good sales process and a great sales process. So, if you start off with the understanding that curiosity is what leads good sales, then you can really fill in a lot of blanks. So, what do you need done? Why do you need it done? What experience have you had in the past? Collecting information and starting with curiosity allows you to get to the root of what is going to matter to the customer. What sorts of solutions do I want to offer them? What sorts of solutions would it be stupid for me to offer? For example, if someone tells you that they are really, really happy with something and they're not looking for a reason to change it, and you come in and start as part of your sales pitch, start trying to explain to them why they should change it, what that shows is that you're already setting them up to tell you no to something. And they already have some sort of allegiance or loyalty or, you know, something in their mind that is binding them to something that you're trying to break. So what I like to do is why are we here? What is it that you need for for us to serve you at the highest level? Then what you can do as the professional is you can start putting together solutions, and those solutions should not be arbitrary. So there's two sides of not being arbitrary. The first is that I need this to be scalable and systemic so that when your neighbor calls me for the same solution, we don't have these wildly different prices and wildly different value propositions. And then secondly, my team is trained in these we always said at our cleaning company, we're a customer service company that just happens to do windows. We hire customer service technicians and we teach them how to do the technical work. This was an important key component because it allowed us to say they are very deeply, trained in these things to clean and these things to provide for you as a service. But they also, the customer service is what's deeply also trained. And so we got consistent results because we were able to provide for customers a consistent team that was all on the same page. So your question is, how do I provide, like as I do my research, how do you provide a perfect or the best possible customer experience or customer
This,
journey?
yeah, the sales process. And just to recap what I just heard, what makes a good salesperson? Someone who's curious and asks discovery questions without assumptions, uncover their pain before where we start trying to solve problems. And then once we understand their pain, then we can make custom proposal or custom solutions or suggestions once we are finished with the discovery phase. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, that's all the ingredients that leads up to the actual tactic. exactly.
So
It's
right
all
now we want to figure out what is the process, what is the journey, the predictable process that we want to take the client through or the prospect through from cold to sold, essentially. What is that journey that we're taking them through, that predictable process that led to you saying, I'm going to create this technology called ResponsiBid that will help mitigate friction in that client journey and can align with that predictability, right? Is that where we're at?
Yep,
Let's do it.
exactly. Exactly. So when I take my technicians who've all been trained and are on the same page and systematically can substitute and build each other in that same realm. Now, when the customer goes into research mode, which everybody listening, you can just think of it. When you're going to buy something, what's the first thing you do? You move into research mode. The day and age that we live in is I'm going to do a Google search. I'm going to ask AI. I'm going to go to Amazon and read reviews. I'm going to, whatever it is you're buying. It could be a car, it could be a house, and it could be a cheese grater. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we all start our purchase process with research mode. Where can I buy it? What's the best thing to buy? What's the best value? What's the thing that's going to scratch my itch? If you don't participate in research mode, you won't be there when it flips to decision mode. So when your customers are trying to figure out what they're going to need or how their solution is going to look, they're going to do a Google search or they're going to see your yard sign or whatever it is that triggers the research mode. And you need to be there to provide the research. What kinds of things do you need to curate in order for someone in research mode to start checking the boxes in their brain? So you have to understand what check marks do they need? Well, they might not know how to determine who a good service provider is. If you can make it quick and easy for me to be able to find that or make that part of the process, then I'm going to continue in that vein with you. Maybe they want to know how much it costs. How difficult do you make it for people to ascertain the cost of what they should be budgeting for? That's a huge part of research mode. Another part of research mode is understanding what is how long is this going to last? How long will this solution last for me? Am I buying the good stuff or am I buying the Harbor Freight version? Right? So if you can outline for yourself these questions that people are asking, you can join into research mode. Then you take all that information and you add that to the front end of your customer journey. That's part of the people who are answering the phones. They're all aware of the top 10 questions. You make a video, the top 10 questions that people ask about this. You have that video on hand, able to ship it to prospects. You begin the process of really uncovering and demystifying what someone needs to know so they can flip over to decision mode. So now think about this. When you're buying something and you find somebody who's able to curate the answers for all the questions that you have, what kinds of things does it take to flip you over into, I'll just go with that? Because that decision mode, that moment where you're like, all right, I'm done thinking about it, I'm ready to move forward, that is the fulcrum of this teeter-totter. So when someone starts getting really close to that fulcrum and you're still the one answering the questions, when it tips, you're going to be there for it. So one of the things that we know is important is that as part of research mode, people don't want to know just what it costs. They want to know how good it is. So part of your sales process must include several, but not too many options. Three is kind of the golden number, but your life could be kind of happy with this solution. Your life could be really happy with this solution, or you could have a life you can't even imagine if you chose this solution. You're familiar with Tommy Mello, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay. So Tommy's company just came out to do our garage door. We're hearing some squeaking up in the garage door. One of our garage bays was acting weird. So who did I call? I called A1 Garage Doors. They came out. And his company is perfect at this. They came out to do the thing. And the guy said, the garage door, I don't know how many times he said it. It was obviously very trained. He said, the most neglected part of a house is the garage door. Everybody just takes it for granted. And it's neglected, it's neglected, it's neglected. He talked about that so much. And he said, I can see that your garage door has already had like 10,000 cycles or something stupid. Like, holy mackerel, we open our garage door that much? He's like, and how many times of those times did you think about your garage door? Probably none. Okay. So the spring that's on your door is rated for 7,000 opens. And you've opened your door 10,000 times. So it's not even a surprise that it's broken today, and it's making these noises. It's going to snap. Everything's going to break. And that's okay. That's what they do. They're wear parts. They break. Your life could be really, really easy right now. Okay. We can put back on the same spring that you got, and we can just go as long as this one did, and you can have the same exact life that you're used to for $250 or whatever it was. I don't know. And then the other thing we could do is we could put this red spring on. This is the spring that only is made for A1 garage doors. It will open 10 times the amount of time that your other garage door spring does. We have a warranty that's insane. We get this thing. And then you also, anytime there's a problem, you just call us and it's fixed. I'm like, wow, that's a pretty good looking life. I like the way my life looks right there. Then he says, or we can do the spring and you could pay us $30 a month to never have to worry about the rollers, and you just pointed all the stuff on the garage door. The stuff that you neglect, all that stuff that you never worry about, you can continue to never worry about it, but it'll still run like a Ferrari. You know why? Because you're paying us $30 a month. And every year, we're going to call you and we're going to ask to come out and just give everything a check over, make sure, and all the parts will always be working well. Like, I like that life. That life sounds like the life I want. So he curated it for me. He attached a price to the value as opposed to what most of us do, right? Most of us, a customer calls, we don't get curious about why. Is your mother-in-law coming in town? Do you have a big problem around this? Is there a time frame you're looking at? We typically are like, okay, you just called for this work. Let me go out. I'm going to give you an ultimatum. Here's a price. Do you want me to do it? But that's not the customer journey that leads to yeses. And it's not the customer journey that leads to true happiness for customers either. What you'll find is that the customers are happy to spend the extra money as long as they understand what the value proposition, their life could look like with that thing. And it's up to you in research mode to make sure that picture is very clear, very clean, understood. Well, once you do that, I'm not asking you yes or no, do you want it? I'm asking you which version of life looks the best to you. And that results in people upselling themselves. It results in a customer that's much, much happier. And oftentimes, that very first version of life that you present, the basic version, typically is very easily said, this is what most of our competitors do. We can do it for you. But we're unshoppable once we move to the deluxe and premium versions of that version of life I just shared with you. And what you'll find is that most people will step up into that medium or highest level package, which obviously everything needs to be priced profitably, but you're going to find that the profit goes to the bottom line a lot faster as you move up to those more luxury services, and you won't have to sell it. Research mode already did it. So decision mode is when it's like, I gotta have it. And that's the thing we all experience in our head when we go, I'm just gonna go with that thing. It's that moment of like, I don't have to think about this anymore. I already know enough information, and I'm not given so much information that I'm overloaded and I got to sit down and think on this more. You did a good job of painting the picture. Does that make sense?
It's great. So I'm going to try to unpack it for the listener. A couple of things. So first, we wanted to, if I understood and heard this right, we want to do the research on behalf of our potential client, right? Our prospect. So we're doing some research, and then ideally we're giving them some sort of indoctrination into our process before we even get to the home. We like to use videos. I know you mentioned videos. We do a discovery. We suggest a discovery call model. So it'd be like 3 emails and videos before a discovery call. So that way we can qualify them, set expectations, and then 3 emails with videos before an on-site. Now, granted, a lot of the people that we work with and businesses are like, their average ticket might be $5,000 to $15,000 versus like, $100 service. So we like to try to set those frameworks, and the video sequences, just to capture it, that we suggest just to captured is what to expect during the call, what separates an amateur versus an expert, and then it's what to expect as far as budgeting. That's kind of the flow that we like to suggest as far as those emails. Just to click on that, and obviously you could kick back if you disagree or you add anything to it. But ultimately, creating some sort of pre-frame. Then, when the salesperson, the technician goes there using a discovery model of neglect, this is why this is happening, and then presenting 3 options: staying the same or just solving the problem you have, something that we recommend, but then also something is like the dream outcome. Those are the 3 options. And then painting it in a picture of what's in it for them. And then not saying, do you want to buy, but it's which option works better for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, not every single tactic will work for every single business. Like what you were saying, as far as, does it need to be three videos for your business? Does it need to be one? Does it need to be 15? The sales cycle, how long it takes people to get approval, make a decision. Like, for window cleaning, like we can knock this thing out in like 5, 10 minutes, right? It can be really short sales cycle. Something like an air conditioning unit in Phoenix, if our air conditioner goes out, like if you show up and you can put me out of my misery for less money than I have in my bank account, we're probably just going to do it right then and there. Like, so sales cycles can be very fast, even regardless of the dollar amount, but they can also be slower and they can require a little bit more time. And if you start with some sort of process, even if it's bad, it's better than most. Like that's the killer here, is that what you just described, you're like, you could push back, Curt. Well, I could push back. I could, and our sales process is never going to be perfect. But the cool thing is it can get better and better. And every iteration, we can take what we learned from the previous iteration and make it better. And even if you can only get it 99.999% there, that's actually that is the pinnacle. So yes, we share this world with a lot of different kinds of people who want to buy a lot of different ways, who have a lot of different needs. And as soon as you start to realize that there's certain people you don't even want to sell to, and you want to make sure that your process works excellent for the people you do want to sell to, you'll find out that your sales process is going to differ from other people. But the key is what you said coming in, as you're coming into that landing strip, you need to have a checklist of things that happen every single time that will prove that you're going to land. And that doesn't mean you're going to get 100% close rate. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that your close rate for the people you can close, that you want to close, is reasonable, and that every person who says no to you understands all the value that they're turning down. That's the biggest problem with people who turn down, that don't close. A lot of people don't know why they didn't close. And it really goes back to the lack of curiosity. So many people have a lack of curiosity in that area. Hey, if you didn't buy from me, you're not our customer. Like that's kind of, you've heard that attitude in the home service world. That's a really common one, is like, I work too hard for my money. If you don't see the value in what I do, then, well, if they don't see the value in what you do, maybe it's not their fault. Maybe it's your fault. Maybe you didn't show your value that well. Maybe you aren't that valuable. Maybe you're not as valuable as you think you are. Maybe you are valuable about 30% of the jobs you go to, but the other 60% you just phone in and you don't actually follow the same process. Like all those things could be uncovered just by spending some time thinking about what your particular process is. And are you happy? Would you buy from you? And if you're not in your target market, that's totally cool. Are people in your target market buying from you? And if they're not, why not? And would you even take the time to ask people why not? Because those things can really uncover stuff for you. But if you're paving the way you described, it's just going to be smoother.
So what we hit on so far is from like in the journey of cold to sold, in the journey from ignorant to informed to intrigued to interested to invested. Right now we're at like the top of the funnel, right? Where we got the appointment booked. Let's assume we booked the appointment. We get there. You gave a really good example with A1 Garage. And now we're on the appointment. We want to create a predictable process that, again, it might be an iPad. It might be like, this is what's going to happen today. We're going to walk through your property. You're going to sit at the kitchen table and watch a video. I'm going to create an estimate for you. And then I'm going to come back and sit with you at the kitchen table and present the estimate. And I'll give you 3 options. And like, that might be what's on the iPad. Well, this is what's going to happen. We're going to walk. I'm going to give you an estimate and I'm going to present the estimate to you. And then we walk the property and explain. So we said, this is what's going to happen. Now we're doing it. And then we come back to the iPad. Okay, now you're going to go to the table and watch a video or something. I'm going to come and I'll come back. Do you want me to knock on the door, or do you want me to just walk in and meet you at the kitchen table? And then it's like, we come to the kitchen table, say, all right, here's my proposal for you. And that's, if I'm understanding correctly, that's where ResponsiBid comes into play, where it's like, while they're in their van coming up with the proposal, they're using your software to like come up with that proposal quickly. Is that kind of what my understanding is?
Yeah. Yep. The kind of the proposal, you get the packages built out. Yeah.
So I don't want to make the assumption, but we have a couple like, House Call Pro does this, or, Company Cam, I think is one, or Lighting Boss. So like there's a couple in the lighting landscape that we have been familiar with. But if you could kind of speak to the problem that some of these guys have is it takes a lot of effort to load it and organize it and set it up like initially. And that's sometimes the friction because there's so many different materials, there's so many different types of services, and they get overloaded that it's just like, I know it will save me time in my truck, but I just can't, can you just kind of speak to maybe, is that just how it is, or is there a resolution to that to make it a little bit streamlined?
Well, a lot of us are used to the old grocery store receipt or regular invoice where line item, line item, line item, line item, grand total, total sales tax at the bottom, right? And that line item approach. There's something called a moral tax that people pay every time they're going through a proposal. So ResponsiBid is focused on getting people to say yes one time, but agreeing to 45 different things all at one time. It's about removing friction. So let me give you an example. There was an experiment that was done. I believe it was at was it Duke University. Forgive me, I can't remember which college it was, but they did an experiment with people who were willing to buy pizza, by the pie, by the slice, and by the bite. Okay, so pizza by the pizza has been done for a long time. The data is all there about how much pizza people buy, and any shop could tell you. But then pizza by the slice came along, and it was great because people could just go buy a quick lunch, and it sort of like opened up this whole new world. So the experiment was, what if we did it by the bite? What if we paid by the bite? Well, what happened is that people who were doing pizza by the bite had overall a much less enjoyable experience, and they ended up not buying as much. Why is that? Well, every time you take a bite of a pizza and you know you're being charged for that bite, you're thinking, do I really need another bite? Can I make this bite really big and make it uncomfortable to chew? Can I, people start thinking totally differently when they have to think about every single thing they're being charged for. When they buy pizza by the pizza, they're buying a solution to feed multiple people. When they buy pizza by the slice or two, they're thinking about a lunch solution for themselves. When you buy it by the bite, that frame completely changes. It's about how much utility, how much enjoyment am I getting versus how much it's costing. And I have to constantly keep paying this moral tax of, am I overspending? Am I doing the right thing? And do I have to redecide? So what we want to do is we want to compartmentalize the amount of solution to one decision. So in this example, what we're talking about here, I used A1 garage. It could be a painter coming to the house, right? I need to understand first, I got to get curious. Are we talking about all four bays at your house of garages? Is this the main one you use? Why did you call me? What is the thing that's like, where are you itching at? I want to make sure that gets scratched regardless of the solution I give you, right? If I'm painting your house, okay, your HOA has me out here. They're upset with you. Okay, so getting them off your back is probably priority one. How would it feel to have all the paint on your house all the same age, interior and exterior? Start asking curious questions. Once I have enough of these questions, now we can just put in the specifications of the job and systematically in our software spit out what kinds of solutions are available. And those solutions available, we can now package and bundle them together so that I can say, your life could look like this, all these things, and here is the cost that it would be for your life to look that way. What they don't realize is that if it's a house painting, I could be getting upgraded paint and multiple colors and interior, exterior, balusters, railings, all the different things, right? There's so many things that I could tell you went into that price. But for the customer to have as little friction and be able to jump to yes and not have to pay by the bite, I say to them, our luxury package means that you don't have to worry about any of this stuff anymore. Everything on your stairs and railings are going to look great. All the walls inside, exterior, they're going to look great. We're going to have all your eave trim, totally two-tone color. And for a mere price of $4,525, it could be done for you by the end of the week. You see what he just did? I just was able to imagine by the end of the week, I don't have to worry about any of this stuff anymore. HOA's off my back. I called you because the HOA's on my back, right? But when you were curious and you asked me some questions, you knew that when you curated something for me and just put a price and a date alongside it, I could see that in my mind. And guess what? My brain went immediately to my bank account and went, can I fit that in the budget? Those are the kinds of questions people need to be asking if they're going to say yes to you. But if the question is constantly like, I don't know if it's worth that. Oh, you're going to charge me $400 just to paint my railings? My kids could, and I could probably just do that over the weekend, save $400, right? It works against you every time you make the people pay that moral tax.
Well, this is super relevant. I'm poking around your website because I love this part of your website. So for anybody that's watching on YouTube, I mean, this is really so far we did the online like to set the expectation before the in person, and then the second part right now we're in the in person. I want to hit on. We talked a little bit about some of these systems, and I want to hit on the follow up too, but based on these two parts of the journey of the online and the in-person that we talked about, setting the expectations before we get to the home, and then doing some sort of predictable sequence of events during the in-person with asking questions and doing some sort of discovery, finding the pains, offering a solution, sitting at the kitchen table, presenting three options. Anything else that you want to hit on those two parts of the client journey of essentially before we get to the home and during while we're actually on site that we didn't hit on yet, that you're like, this is actually really important, or this could be really critical to create a predictable client journey that we didn't get to yet before we make the transition into the follow-up?
Yeah, you actually said something earlier that I know for you it was a throwaway comment because it's probably just second nature to you, but there's a very active ingredient in telling people how things are going to go and then asking their input on one of two ways that this could go. What happens is that when people have you in home for a quote, this power exchange takes place. You are the professional about the thing that they don't know about, but they are the master of the domain of this location. And so there's this exchange of like, I'm coming to you because I don't have all the information I need to make a decision here. I'm still researching what it'll cost to get all my floors replaced or whatever it is, right? And you are in my home. That exchange of power is a ton of trust that has to go back and forth. And so it can get awkward. It can get awkward because do they know if you're going to knock when you come back, or are you just going to walk into their house? Do they know? Like, when you walk around my property, am I going to be with you, or do you have to have me away from you? These are all questions that like legitimately are creating discomfort, and discomfort is not going to lead to a good process. So I just want to make sure, you talk about before and during the actual sales appointment. If I tell you we will arrive between this time and this time, and you do arrive, comfort level. Okay, they do what they say they're going to do. I can trust them. That's a level of trust. I know one of Tommy Mello's things that he does, has his guys do is they call when they're on their way, but they don't just call when they're on their way. Hey, I'm going to be stopping to get some gas at the gas station. Do you want me to grab you anything at the gas station while I'm there? What? Like, that is so key because what it did, it broke down that discomfort. So, hey, I'm gonna go fill up with gas. Do you want me to bring anything back? No, I don't want you to bring anything back. Okay, well, just thought I'd ask. That's the kind of person I am. Okay, when I show up at your house, I already know we're wingmen for each other. We're not oppositional like, the traditional sales like give me a lower price. No, pay more, like we're wingmen. So these kinds of things about saying we're going to sit at your kitchen table. I'm going to show you I have some things I need to show you. Can I use your kitchen table for that? We're sitting at the kitchen table. I'm going to walk around. I'm going to tell you what to expect. You're not going to feel like a fish out of water in your own home. Everything's going to be great. But I do this all day, every day. I know exactly what I'm doing. Don't worry. I'm an expert at this. That exchange is happening. I'm going to come in. Do you want to come in this door or this door? Would you prefer I knock or just walk in? That means that they don't have more decisions they have to make. It's simple, easy, what they're comfortable with. You are making sure to go down their comfort lane. Are you going to ask them, hey, do you want to walk around with me? Do you not want to walk around with me? Do you, I can knock, I can ring the doorbell, I can, like we're not trying to give them a bunch of decisions. We're trying to give them a few that are easy to answer so that by the time you've actually shown them all of the solutions, they haven't had to think too hard. They haven't felt like a fish out of water. And those are all things that are done way before you get to the house. You don't start making this stuff up as you're there because it's going to be different every time and you're going to miss stuff. So, Mike, I assume that you guys have a very well thought out plan when you get to the house. And I think that is, for people who don't have that, again, even if it's bad, that it sets you so far ahead.
One of my mentors said they're either taking you through their buying process or you're taking them through your selling process. And what we want to do is essentially what I just heard Curt say is you want to know what your selling process is. And if you don't, then you're going to be going through their buying process. And that's where we get the looky loos. I'll call you back later. I'm price shopping around. And we start hearing all these objections at the end because we're going through their buying process. But if we want to mitigate those objections and just get a no or a yes, which is fine either way, but we can get to decisiveness, then that's why we want to have some sort of predictable client journey to anchor in decisiveness. And that's why one of the videos or pre-emails is like, can you make sure all decision makers are present? Because I only get to do this design experience with you one time. I only get to do this one walkthrough with you once. And I'd like to make sure all decision makers are present. Would you want your partner or spouse a part of the process with me when I get there? Or are you able to make the decision without them? Because obviously sometimes the ranges of how much things cost, it's usually like 1 to 3% of the home value. So if you're living in $1 million home, it might be 10 to 30,000. And if that is a budget that you would want your partner to be a part of, it's obviously we custom things, but I just want to make sure, do you want them there? Okay, cool. Let's find a time where that person's going to be there, right? So that's like taking them through the selling process as an example. And I don't get too far into the weeds with all this stuff, but the listener oftentimes of this podcast, listener, I know you are typically really good at what you're really good at, which is the swinging the hammer, the wrench, or, doing the thing. And sometimes these like systems and the sales and the client journey stuff, that's why we're having this conversation. And Curt, you're just bringing so much freaking value. I know that people listen to the show, they're going to go back and listen to this a couple of times because you're giving a masterclass on sales process and client journey. So this is really, really good. And I love the Tommy Mello example. I have read, if you haven't read his book, Home Service Millionaire, that is described in the book. And I really love that. Hey, I'm about to, swing by the gas station. I'm going to grab myself a donut and a coffee. Well, what's your favorite donut or coffee? I'll pick you up one, right? Like, that's just awesome. That's such a good nugget there. So anything else, Curt, on before the appointment and during the appointment, before we kind of shift gears a little bit of what happens after they say yes or no?
No, I just let's leave that behind, but let's take one big nugget out of that, which is that people are scared about saying too much before the appointment or scared about trying to set too much of the scene. And I think you just really helped demystify that if you'll just get out of your own head on that and be okay with it, it will go great for you 10 out of 10 times. It's really the only people who have a hard time with setting the stage and getting all that information out ahead of time is the person who's gonna pay the price for not doing it. So I love that.
So then, do you want to hit on anything about the triple option, about presenting the three options? Any additional
Oh,
thoughts there on good, better, best? We did have Danielle Putnam on the show, and she does have the new flat rate, and she went off on 5 options and why that's the magic number. And we did a great episode on why it's important to create and present with multiple options. But if there is any sticking point that you're like, I really would love to make sure listeners understand this psychology or this philosophy or how to come up with those estimates a little bit quicker with a good, better, best, because, we kind of hit on it, but are there some nuances that that ResponsiBid solves for, or that they could take into consideration again to mitigate the time? Because sometimes it takes so much time to create these estimates and these invoices and, anything that you might be able to hit on there might be helpful.
well, one of the reasons that ResponsiBid's proposals aren't really compatible with other CRMs, like it's hard for a CRM to bring our proposal in. Usually the work order process is when our proposal actually makes it in because decisions have been made. But if I offer you a good, better, and best, a 3 or a 5, Responsive could offer you 5 packages to choose from. And I'm not saying that, well, we'll get to that here in a second. But the point is that you can't add up all the number of packages and come to a grand total that makes any sense, right? If you have the good version for $99, the better version for $199, and the best version for $299, I can't just total those 3 things up, put them on some sort of like a normal estimate sheet and have it make any sense. They only make sense unto themselves, right? Which decision do you want to go with? So there is a bunch of people who are probably listening and going, how would I present packages? You can't present packages in the standard format. You have to The same reason when you go to like McDonald's and you go to purchase a value meal. You got your drink, your fries, and your sandwich, right? And there's a certain number of things to choose from. But you can supersize them, right? We can supersize it, but at the end of the day, adding up everything on the menu wouldn't make any sense because you're already going to drink and fries with everything. So you're just talking about the sandwich at that point. Okay, so here's the problem with offering too much. It's Donald Miller, build your story brand. I think it's building your story brand. He talks about people holding bowling balls. So if I hand you a bowling ball, you can hold it comfortably. If I hand you two more, you're not holding them super comfortably, but you could do it. If I handed you five bowling balls, you're kind of at your limit. You're probably holding three underneath and then maybe two on top of those, and you're kind of holding against your body. But at some point, I'm going to hand you a bowling ball and you will hold no more bowling balls. You're at like they're all going down. Now, there's two things we do to get in our own way. Number one, we want to sound smart, so we give too many people too many bowling balls. And that's the problem with this traditional estimate sheet that has just line items. If I give you 10 line items, it's just more than your brain's memory RAM can hold. And you're overloading it. And at some point, like I just don't even know anymore, right? The other thing we do is we use jargon. We wrap these bowling balls, we take these bowling balls and we slather Vaseline all over them. We say, yeah, in window cleaning, I'm going to use a hog's hair brush on a high modulus carbon fiber pole. We're going to use deionized water through a 5-stage process that does carbon sediment filtration, deionization with RO water. We'll need a standard spigot to be able to hook into, and the person's listening and they're going, I thought you were just going to clean my windows. Yeah, but I'm not just a window cleaner. I'm a smart one. I use hog's hair brush with deionized. Stop it. You're putting Vaseline all over these bowling balls, and you're making it difficult for this person to hold on to the information you're giving them. You've got to give them information that they can hold, and you have to give them the right amount of information that they can hold it in comparison with each other. If five is the magic number, which I would say in the case of building a pool, it's not the magic number. It's too small. If I'm getting a pool built, I got to talk about the texture of the pool inside, the color of the texture of the pool inside, how many gallons the pool is going to have. Does it have a diving end? Does it not have a diving end? Is it a play pool? Does it have a diving board? Does it have an alcove in it? We haven't even talked about the decking around the pool yet, or the plants, or the pumps, or the filter. Like, no, we're going to have to make more than five decisions to get a swimming pool. But you could do things to make it so that it's a lot less. Like, let me decide on this part. Okay, great. That was really easy to decide. Okay, I'm going to set that aside now. Now here are three other decisions that you can pick from, right? We have to break it down that way. If it's window cleaning, I could probably give you three options and give you very comprehensive options. Window cleaning, the world I came from, very, very simple. As we move into like pressure washing or roofing or painting, things can get complicated really quick. So first off, we need to talk about the quality of your paint. Do you want to go with a really high quality paint that has a shine to it? Do you want to go with a matte color? What do you want to do? Like, okay, cool, we got the paint. Now we need to talk about the tones of the paint. Do you want to go with a tone like around the eaves and do you already have something in mind? Let's get curious again so I can root out all the stuff we don't need to talk about. Once you come up with a number of packages and bundles, you will know that I'm going to hand you a number of bowling balls that you can hold at one time. I will have simplified it so that it doesn't have a bunch of jargon around it. And we will be able to keep setting bowling balls aside in a way where you never feel at any point, if your customer just their eyes glaze over and they drop all the balls, all the work you did up to that point is for naught. You have to think ahead. We're going to make a bunch of really easy decisions. Now, in the case of a garage door, you can do it all at one. You can hand me all the bowling balls I need to make all the decisions I need to make. And I think that even though it was complicated, Tommy's company spent the time to figure out the process ahead of time so we knew all the things that need to be presented in the end, given the circumstances. So the salesman has to be smart enough to understand, given these circumstances, these are the options I'm going to be showing. I'm not going to bother with the rest of it. So anyway, the number I think it's arbitrary given the field, but it is true that we have to show the right amount.
Mhm. Well, and one of the things that I heard you say is during the discovery process, it's really important to take detailed notes because while we're doing the walkthrough, we're saying what materials are important to you, right? And for you, I'm assuming if you want to be a differentiator, you're probably not going to offer the lowest quality material because now you're competing on price. So usually someone listening to the show is probably going to use high, like quality material that they can back their reputation of, with. So it's like what type of materials, and then it's like design is one of the other categories. Like what type of design are we doing? And then maybe it's like what part of the house or what part of the property, right? Like, because they could do maybe the front yard, backyard, sides of the house as an example. If it's lighting, or for the pool, it's like what part of what part of the pool are we handling at first, right? We could do different phases potentially, like phases of the design or parts of the home for the design, because maybe phases 1 and 2 are what we suggest, but phases 1, 2, and 3 are going to be the dream outcome. Or it's like front, back, and sides is the dream outcome, but just the front is going to be for the middle or the lower one. And then the different materials might be for the lower and the mid, potentially. Again, I don't want to oversimplify something that sometimes can't be simplified that way, but that's kind of what I was hearing there in some regard.
Well, there's price anchoring that goes two ways. You can anchor people to high prices, and you can and people and break them off at the low price they're on. You can also price anchor to something that's low and substandard. So one example is if somebody calls you over thinking that they're going to get their house painted for $200 because they heard someone did that, or there was a sign on the side of the road that said whole house painting for 200 bucks. Everyone knows that no one's getting their house painted for $200, but for some reason this is just what I've got to fight against at this customer's house. You can anchor them to what people are actually paying, but it won't work if you give them the middle range, because they're just going to say, "What? That's outrageous!" Like we could do it for $2,500. We could do this like this middle. Wow, that's way more than 200. They're already anchored to 200. So you can use a high price to say, look, if we came in here with the good paint and the good painters and the like multiple colors and all this, it's gonna end up running about $7,500 to paint this section of your house. Well, what? Don't worry, we don't have to do that. I can step down from there, and now I can start talking to you about my $3,500 whatever solution. And now they're not coming from 200, they're coming from 7,500. So you can use price anchoring high. The other one you can do, if it's reasonable, is you can also talk about yeah, you're right. People do paint houses for $200. The problem is that you're going to have to take a day off of work, and we're going to come out here and we're going to do the thing, and the paint will be flaked up and off your house within about 6 months. It's this really low, or whatever it is, right? You help paint the picture for why this lower quality substandard package should not even be on the table. And so you can do that. You can dismantle their wrong anchoring in their mind both ways. Traditionally, it is better to help them see what the world is spending on the good stuff and then bring them down from there to what they actually want. But either way, you have to ruin the false narrative that's in their head.
Could you spend, I know man, this time flow, it always does. Can you hit on this follow-up piece? I know we hit a little bit on the systems, but I'd really love to hear like what happens after the decision is made on your website, the ResponsiBid site, comprehensive follow-up steps, and always on sales funnel and scale your quoting and sales process. What happens after we ask them, do you want to buy? Just kind of speak to that, like an if yes and if no type of, scenario that you like to teach, or you like to, that you see works really well with your client avatar.
Yes. Couple things. First off, follow-up starts the moment someone is in the research funnel. So we follow people regardless. And Mike already talked about what happens before I get to the appointment. We're following up even before we get there, because we got to set the stage. That stage that we set needs to continue after we've spoken. If a decision was not, well, actually, we follow up even if they make a decision, don't we? Like we still got to follow up and confirm and check to make sure that we get a review and make sure they want to refer their friends and make sure that they're satisfied and all that. So follow up is this big, huge thing. But the follow up after a no commit sale is key, that we tie back to the stuff that we talked about previously. We're going to refer to stuff in the appointment. We're going to refer to stuff before the appointment. Help them understand what their world could look like. Now, what will often happen is when people are looky-loos, they show up in our close rate on the wrong side of the margin, right? So someone says, I'd love to get a quote for your services. You come out and you're high. Surprise, surprise. We're a high quality provider. Our price was high. I did a good job of painting the value, but you still like couldn't get out of your own way because you're like, golly, these other people are making pretty big promises too. So I'm going to go with the company that's cheaper. Well, when they do that, your opportunity, sorry, that is now called a declined customer. Someone who declines a quote, we mark them as a non-closed job opportunity, and we carry on with our life, but we do not leave that customer alone because we know that several things are probably going to happen. If they are going with a cheaper provider, there is a good possibility that promises were made that aren't going to get kept. I just know that from experience. People who aren't running legit businesses tend to charge less and they run a non legit business. They don't have the insurance to cover for the problems that may occur. They don't show up when they say they're going to show up. They don't do good quality work. It doesn't matter. All we know is that we've already shown this person that we're reliable and they close the door on us. So it's our job to make sure that we keep that door open because there's a good probability that they need to get back through that door without looking like an idiot. All of us are trying. Brian Regan, the comedian, once said, we're all just trying to make it through life without looking like idiots. He said it was a funny bit, joke, and everything too. But it could not be more true. It couldn't be more true. So when I call you up and say, "Hey, Mike, I'm going to go with this other guy. You guys are outrageously expensive. I'm going with the guy who's half your price." Okay, and I feel so cool when I say that to you, and you feel so bad. So we hang up. So your first thing is like, "Golly, how dare them talk to me that way?" And they're like, "Haha, I'm so smart. I didn't get fooled by the expensive guy." Well, I go with the cheap guy. The cheap guy doesn't return my calls anymore. He doesn't show up the day it's supposed to happen. Now I can't call you back. Why? Because it'll make me look like an idiot. I told you you're too expensive, and then my cheap guy acted like a cheap guy, and I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. But you're more humble than that. You want their business. You don't care. Like, don't let that stop you from calling me, but it's human nature. They're not going to. If you are following up with that person in a way that is super classy, that shows your commitment to communication, to producing good work, you open that door back up. You leave it cracked open and it's easy to push through. So if a week from now, I get an email from you that says, "Hey, Curt, just following up with you. It's Mike. I just want to make sure that that service guy did a great job. If you had any questions, I just want to make sure you know we're still here for you and we're still thinking of you." Well, I just told you what an idiot you were for trying to charge too much. And then you came back to me with that kind of response. That puts me in a nice, humble position to be able to say, Mike, I got to be honest with you. I thought I was getting a great deal, but that guy didn't ever show up. Is your estimate still good? Because I'm wondering if maybe it'd be better for me just to get this thing done?
So good. Yeah, that is so good. And listener, truly, truly important to have this follow up. And if anybody hasn't done so, you could always book a session with me. I'm sure Curt has some resources. We have a couple of free resources for you. For example, like there's an if yes, the customer buys, what happens next? And then there's an if no, the customer doesn't buy, then there's a 21-day automated nurture sequence that takes them through with the quote because the estimate is good enough only for those 21 days as an example. And then it's like if the customer does buy during the appointment and you want to maximize the lifetime value of the client, what happens 12 months post install, all the emails that happen over the course of the next 365 days leading up to the 12, the 1 year warranty. So we have a ton of these already templated out. We could put them into an AI that's with your avatar tone and brand. So that way it's ready for your team to just enter into your CRM. So listener, there's tons of resources out there for you to make sure that you have automated follow-up happening because it's necessary. Curt, this has been awesome. I know we're coming to the end. Is there anything that we didn't hit on today, we didn't talk about that you're like, dang, I really wanted to before I ask the final question that we ask every guest, and then you can tell people where to go? I know you have a free resource for them.
Yeah, maybe I'll just tell them about the free resource now, just so that people know, because that's really the thing is like maybe you've been thinking about your own process and where you could probably use to grow a little bit. It's just to get your mind thinking. But if you go to responsibid.com, right there at the top of the page, well, just above the very top, there's a blue bar that talks about getting a sales audit quiz free of charge. Yeah, you can just scroll to where it says know exactly where your sales process is leaking. You can just take a free quiz. It helps you to be able to identify where you're strong, where you're weak, what you need to put your effort into, how to be able to get your customers the most smooth process of just making from research to decision mode. So it's fast, it's easy, and it's really insightful.
It's really cool. And there's no opt-in, so I could take the quiz, and then I assume at the end it'll ask for my email address, and that's where the opt-in happens, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We ask every guest, Kurt, what does it mean to you to be better than rich?
Healthy and happy. To be honest with you, I've spent a lot of time trying to do things to accumulate money, make an honest living and stuff. And what I found is that one of the first things you neglect is the people who are closest to you and your own health. So, I'm an avid mountain biker, and I went away for a while, but I'm back, and that's super good for me. And I'm doing it with my boys and with my spending time with my wife, making sure I do my date nights and stuff. To me, better than rich just means that you have a community of people around you who will cheer you on and support you. Yet that's typically the group of people, including yourself, that you treat the worst. And I would just say make sure you're carving out time each day and each week and each year to do what it means in those particular categories, to take your support crew and your cheerleading squad and treat them as they should be treated. And I do put you into that category, your own self, because as entrepreneurs, sometimes it's a pretty selfless place to be. And you can find yourself in a position where you're pretty upside down on your emotional bank account just because you haven't taken care of yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Kurt. How old are your kids?
I have a 22-year-old daughter, 21-year-old son, 17-year-old son, and a 13-year-old son.
13 to 22. Dang.
Yeah.
Dude, you look like a young guy. I don't know. How do you have a 22-year-old?
I know. And she just had her boyfriend just asked me a question about if I would give him my blessing to talk to her. So we'll see. I may be a father-in-law at some point.
Wow. Congratulations. Maybe. Congratulations. So
Yeah.
very, very cool, Kurt. We really appreciate you. And everybody, listener, please do yourself a favor. Go to responsibid.com, do the free 2-minute sales process audit. I think it's a really great quiz. I think it's a great resource, and I think you should book a free demo. I mean, if you're in the space, I mean, mainly Kurt, your pressure washing and window cleaning, or is it really anybody in the home services or the trades?
Yeah, anyone in the trades that don't require a ton of materials. So like carpet cleaning, maid service, window cleaning, pressure washing, gutter cleaning. Those are our real bread and butter. Duct work cleaning. But as soon as you start like getting to the handyman or someone who's got like material costs, ResponsiBid can be a little bit tricky in those. So we try to stick to the others. Yeah.
Sounds great. We got a couple pressure washers, that should definitely check you out. So I'll make sure we send this episode to them to check out. So Kurt, thank you. Listener, as always, thank you. We couldn't have the show without you. And if you're enjoying season 4, be sure to let us know. We stream these live. We have a few more really awesome episodes coming up that you could join us live. We're streaming this right now in the beginning of October. A couple of really good conversations, including Christine Hodge, who introduced me to Kurt, is coming on the show. So as always, leave today better than you found it. We'll see you next time on the Better Than Rich Show. Cheers. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at betterthan_rich and join our Facebook group at the Better Than Rich Show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, leave today better than you found it.